Thanks everybody for joining us. Today we're here with Maggie to talk about managing life-threatening food allergies in schools. I like to start with a little bit about CPAC. For those of you who don't know who CPAC is, we're the Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center. And our role is to support families who have children with disabilities in special education and everything that connects to that. One of the things we ask folks when we do live presentations is to be conscious about your child and your privacy. And so if you have some individual questions that are more personal, we would appreciate it if you could call us and talk to us directly about that. In the group setting, we like to talk about things that are more applicable to everyone, so that it doesn't become too personalized and people don't share too much private. Also, it's really important that people understand we are not attorneys and we are not providing legal information. This is for educational purposes only. Does anybody have any questions before we start? Okay, then I'm going to turn it over to Maggie. If you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you would like the time to go with everyone, whether we ask you questions as we go, how would you like to proceed?
Yes, thank you, Jane. And I want to say thank you to Jane and CPAC for offering me this opportunity and platform to share this important information about life-threatening food allergies in the public schools. As far as I'm concerned, I'd love for this throughout the presentation for people to interject if they have any questions, to make this really a dialogue and useful for everyone attending. So just to jump right in, a little bit about myself. My name is Maggie Francis Geetson. I'm actually a veteran educator of 20 plus years in the public schools, as well as a parent of 2 children who have a diagnosis of life-threatening food allergies. So I'm coming to this presentation wearing kind of both hats and in both capacities to share perspectives from both lenses. So I'd love to, again, hear all of your perspectives. And really, Jane, the goal of this presentation, I did it for a project for my partners in policy. And one of the goals was, from a parent perspective, having children with food allergies, I felt like I needed more information about how food allergies were being managed in the state of Connecticut and in the public schools. And then as a teacher, the same question always lingered in my head too, to get more information about how best to support my students in the public schools that had food allergies. So just to begin, oops, just make sure, there we go. So again, the goal of having an effective food allergy management plan in the public schools is to ensure the safe, inclusive, and equal as peers access to education. I put this kind of visual up for everybody because I really wanted to emphasize this piece, and I'm very visual as well, but this is the piece that's very important when we move forward and look at some of the plans that support students with food allergies in the public schools, is that, again, that all of these lenses are looked at equally. So safety, equal and inclusive access for the student. The overall purpose, as Jane mentioned, this is not to offer legal or medical advice, but to offer a synthesis of common recommendations for effective food allergy management that I found common and vetted guidance documents. And just to quickly review this so that the audience will get a perspective of all the guidance documents, I should say, that I reviewed and saw the commonalities, is the CDC offers voluntary guidance. The Connecticut State Department of Education offers guidelines for managing life-threatening food allergies in Connecticut schools. And that's a very important one because we live in Connecticut, to really see the support that CSDE has offered us as parents and educators. The National Association of School Nurses, the USDA, the United States Department of Education, Office of Civil Rights, the National Association of State Boards of Education, Connecticut Association of Boards of Education, CABE, and so on. These are just a few. So food allergies, if you're here today and you have a child, a student, or a loved one, or an acquaintance that has food allergies, unfortunately, we know the prevalence of food allergies in children is increasing. 50%. In fact, according to a 2013 study released by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, food allergies among children increased by 50% between 1997 and 2011. That means
Wow.
one in 13 children have food allergies, and nearly 40% of these children have already experienced a severe allergic reaction, and many of these reactions happened at school. Again, that goal to bring back all of these students that are in school, we really want to offer them once they're in the classroom to ensure that they can be safely included and have equal access to their education. And there's that, again, lens again, safe, equal, and inclusive access. So where would you begin as a parent to look for information on how to approach a school when your child's ready to enter the public school? Well, first, ask questions, lots of questions before your child begins school. I think it's really important to be proactive. The top 10 tips that I would offer from all of the recommendations offered by these guidance documents for food allergy management in schools would be, one, to communicate with your schools. Like I said, start early. So that means, as a parent, I would contact the principal, the nurse at your school that your child would be attending, and talk to them about, what are the steps that I should take to be ready to discuss my child's food allergies, and then request a meeting with the principal or the nurse to initiate this planning process. Ask about district food allergy management policies that are already in place, the regulations, and the district food allergy management plan. This food allergy management plan should give you as a parent, as well as the teachers, an overview of all of the vetted protocols that the district follows and across district on how to manage a student's food allergies. And then request copies of any of the forms that are required by the school before school starts. Number two, visit your child's doctor prior to the start of school. So after you contact the school, most likely they'll give you an idea that you will need to have a form filled out by your doctor, your allergist, to request prescriptions for the emergency medications, the epinephrine in this case for food allergy students, a medical authorization form, an emergency action plan, and usually the allergist, as food allergy parents, we understand that they always provide it for us, the emergency action plan in case of a reaction. This is what we do. And that emergency action plan would most definitely be passed on to the school as a piece of information for them to use in your meeting. And then there is also a form that's most often provided to the parents that's called the Special Dietary Needs Accommodation Form. And it's actually from the USDA. And it's in case your child is going to participate in the food service program at the school. That also would be necessary. The allergist would need to fill that out as well.
Maggie, can I interrupt you there?
Sure.
Only because we hear a lot of times that if the student is on free or reduced lunch, that having an allergy is not it can't be accommodated. That's what parents tell us they're being told. And what you're saying is there's a form actually for that purpose.
There is. There definitely is. And as well, when I was going through all of the guidance documents, the USDA actually has put out a very detailed guidance document to support parents and as well as the districts to actually describe different scenarios of how those students can be accommodated.
And was that one of your resources on the other page?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So we will share those resources with anyone who's interested in them. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. That's an important document, as well as, just to make sure that the child, because every food allergy student has different allergies. So that way it's a very prescriptive and individual form that's filled out.
But it's a challenge for a family who does qualify and then they're told that they can't access the free and reduced lunch because of the allergy. This will remove that barrier. So thank you.
That's a violation.
Let me go back. I'm sorry. It kind of. So number 3, while you're getting all of these forms filled out, number 3 would be to learn about your federal and state laws that support students and families of students with food allergies. Federal law, the American with Disabilities Act, the ADA, as well as the ADAA, support food allergy students. And the Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act also supports students with food allergies. And I'll get into a little bit more. Under Connecticut state law, you can become familiar with the Public Act 05-104, an act concerning food allergies and the prevention of life-threatening incidences in school. That also will share with you the information that Connecticut has put into law to support students with food allergies. Now, the American with Disabilities Act prohibits discrimination against persons with disabilities in all areas of public life, including schools. It defines disability as having any physical or mental impairment substantially limits one or more major life activities. And it's enforced by the United States Department of Education, the Office of Civil Rights. And in 2008, the ADA was amended and became the ADAA of 2008. And basically the definition and scope of terms, disability and major life activity, were expanded and broadened to really verify that other disabilities would be covered under this particular law. And as such, students with food allergies. Sometimes it's always a question, when it's a hidden disability, and food allergies is definitely a hidden disability. It did not change the expectation, though, to provide a reasonable modification for students. And a person with a disability does not carry a high burden of proving that he or she has a disability. And that means that, with a prior diagnosis, a history of, there's 3 criteria that would qualify a student with food allergies as having a disability.
Can I interject something here?
Sure, Gretchen.
So the Americans with Disabilities Act was amended in 2008 under the ADA Amendments Act. And basically it was because all the courts were eroding the original definition of the ADA. So it didn't really do a lot of expanding and broadening. It brought back the reasonableness of the definition so that people would get past that in court and could actually get to whether or not they were being discriminated against. So the carrying the high burden that you're talking about is true. It's sort of like you don't have to jump as high a hoop now to go through that. And they, when you talk about broadening the scope, they just really clarified a lot more about what would be a disability and what wouldn't be, because again, the courts were getting really fussy and very restrictive, which was not the intent of the ADA to begin with.
I appreciate that it clarified for everyone. Now, the Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, this particular law outlines how schools address individual needs of students with food allergies. It also is administered by many agencies, such as the Department of Education, and it has a more narrow than the ADA. It's more narrow than the ADA, and it applies only to the organizations that receive federal financial assistance, but including schools that receive that financial assistance. The discrimination too is prohibited against qualified individuals with a disability. Students with a disability are to be accommodated under this law to the maximum extent necessary to be safely and equally included and allowed access along their non-disabled peers. So having said that, when food allergy students enter the public school systems, there's usually 3 plans that schools utilize to support students with food allergies. One is the emergency care plan. They're known as the ECP. The second is the individualized healthcare plan, the IHCP, or the 50 and the 504 plan. So these three plans, again, are most often in place in schools. And people often ask, what is the role of each of these plans? And the role of the emergency care plan, if you look at the word emergency and focus on that, that plan helps nurses, the school personnel, respond and react to the emergency situation in case a student with food allergies has a reaction. It really is a prescription of the steps you follow, what to do, how to administer the epinephrine for the student. It provides those, again, specific directions that are appropriate for that individual student's diagnosis. It's often part of the individual healthcare plan. It's attached. And then what is this role of this individual healthcare plan? Well, if you look at the word individual and health, and then the words healthcare. So this individual plan is a plan that is established for that individual child with food allergies that are specific to their food allergies. And the plan describes, how to meet their individual daily health and safety needs in a school setting. It's really a functional health plan that the nurse meets with the parents to set up. Often it's done too with the members of the 504 team, which we'll talk about in the next slide. But it basically has student objectives too for promoting self-care and age-appropriate independence. And you'll often see that it's outlined about with what the parents' responsibilities are for the healthcare, such as the parents will provide the epinephrine auto-injector for the school. It'll describe the school nurse's role. The school nurse, often it'll say the nurse will train staff on how to administer the epinephrine. It describes the teachers, students, administrators, or other school staff's responsibilities. And again, to go back to that word, to support the healthcare of the child, that safety in the healthcare.
Maggie, what about the school bus? Does it transfer over to the school bus?
That's a great question, Jane. Yes, it does. So they would also have plans for, there'll also be accommodations in the healthcare plan that will state where the medicine will be when the child is on the bus, where they are in the school, any environment. So that would be the first environment. If they're coming to school, where will the medication be? Will they self-carry? Will they have it in their backpack? Will they hand it off to the bus driver? That's the one thing too. It varies for district to district and child to child, depending on, again, their individual needs and their personalities, their developmental level. That's probably something just to interject here. Another lens to look through this presentation is the age of the child at the elementary level, the middle school, and the high school. These, when we get into this next slide, the 504 plan, it's going to look very different as the child develops and grows and gains more personal responsibility for managing their own food allergies in the school setting. It's like with everything, that gradual release of responsibility for the child. So the third plan, the 504 plan, shares the name of the section 504. It's really that third lens about having equal and inclusive, those two lenses, equal and inclusive access to their education. So this plan is really to secure that lens for the student, those two lenses for the students. So to ensure persons with the disabilities have the maximum extent possible, the opportunity to equal access to education, to provide that free and appropriate public education FAPE, as we also have come to know under students with IEPs. The IDEA law also provides that to each qualified student with a disability, regardless of the nature or severity of that student's disability, to provide a student with a disability access to education equal to that of his non-disabled peers, and to safely include the student in all programs provided or sponsored by the school, and to ensure a safe and inclusive environment. Number 5 is to review your district policy, regulations and food allergy management. And that's important for parents to understand too, because particularly the food allergy management plan, as we mentioned before, it really has that comprehensive vetted protocols, medical educational protocols for staff across the district to have a common lens and understanding of how to address like a baseline of good practice, which to build a student with food allergies, their 504 plan off of, to individualize, use that 504 plan to individualize. These protocols and the food allergy management plan for the district really give that outline. It should include also the preparation for food allergy emergent response, like what the district does. It should provide you an understanding of the provisions that the district offers for training on food allergies for all staff, the provision for educating the school community about allergies, and also offering how to maintain a safe and inclusive access to the educational environment. Number 6, once you've gotten that basic, understanding, you've requested the initial meeting, made your contact, you went to the allergist, you're reviewing the federal and state laws, and you've looked at the district level now, then the next step would be to request a 504 eligibility meeting. So you would contact your 504 coordinator in writing to request a 504 determination meeting. And then once they receive that request, the 504 coordinator would schedule this meeting. The 504 team would assemble with the key members. That would be the principal, the nurse, the parent, the child, if age appropriate, the food service staff, the classroom teacher, I think I mentioned the principal, and if there's a specific 504 coordinator too. Then once they assemble, the 504 team would review all the medical information that you presented to make that determination. And then the 504 team, if you find your child eligible or ineligible, and most often, once you go through the process, even in the Connecticut State Department of Education guidelines, they had stated that most often a child with food allergies would be found eligible for a 504 plan, noting that it would impact their eating or breathing. A reaction would do such. Number 7, so once you've had this determination, found eligible, you would have a formal 504 meeting. And as you see listed, those are as I mentioned, the team members. Now that you're in a 504 meeting, that process would be with all of the members present. You would consider the age of the child, the developmental stage, and you would consider all the different environments. And as Jane mentioned, starting with the bus, the classroom, the lunchroom, the specials, different times of the day, the snack, recess, what would it look like for that child? And then you would determine appropriate accommodations to support the safety, inclusion, and equal access to the program, the educational program provided at school. And then once the team has come up with appropriate accommodations, you'd evaluate it for that safety and inclusion and the individual needs that they're met for that particular student, and then make sure that plan is complete. And then number 8, as we started talking about, the common areas for accommodations usually are, when you think about a student's day, it starts with the bus ride, goes into not just the classroom, but the classrooms if they're switching classes for specials at the elementary level, or if at the middle school level, they're switching for subject areas in the high school. Looking closely at the curriculum, seeing if there's food present in the curriculum. Where will snack take place? Will it be in the classroom? Will it be in the cafeteria? Recess, where will the students' epinephrine be? Will it be on them? Will they have the aide hold their medication while they're at recess? Gym class, the same thing. Field trips, being proactive and discussing field trips and the different accommodations that could happen for that particular food allergy student, whether or not the parent will be a medical chaperone at that time, or if the parent isn't able to go, if they have the school nurse or a trained person on the epinephrine attend field trips. The PTO and the PTA events, this is an area sometimes that has a discussion about that these events should also be inclusive for food allergy students, that if there is food being served at these events, that there's also accommodations made to provide safe alternatives for students with food allergies. So districts talk about and discuss celebrations, birthdays, rewards, and recommendations are, should they be non-food celebrations and non-food rewards offered, or should they have the food allergens of those particular students, the absence of those food allergens with, if they're having a reward such as a pizza party, are they going to also, if they're going to have a pizza party, will they be accommodated with safe alternatives for the food allergy students? That would also be something to discuss at this 504 meeting. And before and after school programs, those two can be a topic of discussion for accommodations for students with food allergies.
Maggie, I just want to add, because I think before and after school programs, I'm thinking like a childcare program. But extracurricular activities, as long as it's sponsored by the school, if there's a food component, also need to be considered, correct?
Correct, Jane, thanks for clarifying that. And exactly, if there's a food component, and right, exactly, for sports is a great example. There's a sports event. I'm trying to think of other alternatives. If there's a special, even a curriculum event too after school, right, there should be.
We had clubs, and I know that some of the teachers that sponsored the clubs would have a snack for the students, you know, so if it was a Lego club or a chess club, or, but they, in my district, they were school sponsored events. So I think for clarity, it's about whether the school is sponsoring the event or an entity of the school that puts this requirement in the mix, correct?
Correct. If it's,
But-
go ahead, Gretch.
I'm sorry, but you also have to consider the before and after school programs. If they're not school sponsored, they also have 504. They may have 504 depending on whether they get some subsidies for the kids, but they'll have ADA obligations under Title III of the ADA, not necessarily Title II. But you have to watch out for religious sponsored programs because they're exempt.
But Gretchen, if they're in the school building, wouldn't that mean that the school is contributing the space and therefore it is a public dollars facility?
It depends on the arrangement.
Okay,
So like that could be possible.
okay, but it's something to definitely consider. And, you know, if it's not one of the few exemptions, then it should be covered. And again, most before and after do breakfast and snacks. So it usually would have a food component.
Right. No, that's again important to consider about whether or not the food components there, as well as their sponsorship. So once you are going to the 504 meeting and you've accomplished creating a comprehensive 504 plan for your child, some of the recommendations to be proactive, because it just wearing that parent hat sometimes can be unnerving, and as well as, you know, as prepared as you are, sometimes it's really important to bring a support person, whether it's your spouse, friend, to just be a second set of ears, to keep you on your list of questions. It's okay to document the meetings and interactions via email, just to clarify if you have any questions, or just to make sure you have the understanding from the meeting, the conclusion from the meeting. offer when you are in the meeting, if there's something that you're still questioning and you feel that the suggestion for accommodation isn't what you quite thought would be appropriate for your student, it's okay to offer solutions whenever possible that maybe the team hasn't thought of, because you are an equal participant of the 504 team. You're a team member, and that offers collaboration with your child's school. And then once you do receive the accommodation, the 504 plan, review the plan and make sure it continues to meet the needs of your child. So often with food allergy students, they're working at times with food therapy, oral immune therapy, and sometimes they just outgrow their food allergy. And so their allergens might change from testing or from this therapy. So typically, districts tend to review these 504 plans on an annual basis, but you can always call a meeting, a 504 meeting, to discuss it with the team if there's any changes or if any accommodations that were suggested aren't working. And number 10, under a 504 plan, the food allergy students do have procedural safeguards afforded them. So just like an IEP, the notice, the records review, the due process, and the appeal process. So to recap, again, communicate with your school, visit your child's doctor prior to the start of school, review the federal and Connecticut state law.
Maggie, I don't know if you can hear me, but you have frozen. So you may want to try turning off your camera to see if that will help, if you're still there. We'll give her a minute to regroup.
Technology is great.
Yeah. Well, I've been thrown off the Zoom calls before, but I've never had my presenter freeze before. Oh, we've lost her. So we're going to give her a minute to call back in and see if she can reconnect. If she's out of internet for whatever reason, if she got cut off, we will probably have to contact you guys to finish this. But let's give her a couple minutes and see if she can get back in. I think she's just, as she was at a recap, she's just about to finish things up.
Yep, she is.
She may be, I'm going to stop the Facebook. And I'm going to stop recording.